And welcome to Advances in Emergent Needs in Paleogeoscience Cyber Infrastructure, a webinar series organized by C4P. C4P, Collaboration in Cyber Infrastructure for Paleogeosciences, is an EarthCube Research Coordination Network supported by the National Science Foundation. I'm Leslie Shee, and I'll be the moderator today. In today's talk, we'll have one presentation, approximately 25 minutes long, with time for questions afterward. If you have any questions, just send them through the WebEx chat window, and I'll read them aloud after the presentation. You can send in a question at any time. All presentations and follow-up discussion will be publicly archived on the EarthCube website and at the C4P YouTube channel at youtube.com/Cyber4Paleo. Our speaker today is Kerstin Lehnert, and she'll be speaking about the EarthCube iSamples RCN and an AGU Early Career Forum on digital sample curation. So Kerstin has the screen share now. I'll unmute you, and you can start when ready.
Okay, great. Thanks, Leslie. So welcome, everybody, and I will try to give you a brief overview of the Research Coordination Network, iSamples, and present a little forecast on the Early Career Forum that will happen in December in conjunction with the AGU Fall Meeting. The iSamples acronym stands for Internet of Samples in the Earth Sciences and is a research coordination network that was funded this summer through the EarthCube program. Let me just get to moving this forward. We have a steering committee for this iSamples effort that I would like to acknowledge and thank them for their participation in this effort. Just as a reminder to everybody who is on this call, and most of them are actually involved with the C4P Research Coordination Network as well, so it's just a reminder what the EarthCube RCNs are intended to do. They are supposed to promote interaction, discussion between geoscientists and cyber infrastructure experts to advance the use of cyber infrastructure in the geosciences, and also to provide opportunities for the community to organize themselves, to seek feedback within their community and beyond on issues related to data, to modeling, to computing, technology needs, and come to some level of consensus, hopefully, through interaction in many different ways of communication. Many of you might have seen this diagram that was created by the National Science Foundation to show the diversity of EarthCube communities, and I've just highlighted the ones that actually deal with physical samples, and I might even have missed some of them that perhaps have samples, but I'm not fully aware of, something like space weather or magnetospheric physics. The rationale for our effort here is that samples are quite closely connected to the data that are used in the geosciences. They actually, in many communities, they represent the raw data on which observations are made both in the field and in the lab. And in that respect, the digital data about these samples, be they descriptive, be they analytical, need to be linked very closely with the physical samples in order to ensure that data generated on samples can be reproduced and verified, and that the samples also remain accessible for further studies. And again, you know, with the three little photos down here wanted to emphasize how different samples can be that we collect in the geosciences. So physical samples actually have, oops, there's one box missing, not sure why that happened, that we talk a lot about the life cycle of digital data. And physical samples actually have a life cycle in the physical world as well as in the digital world. At collection of the physical specimen, we generate information about the sample, how it was collected, when, what type of sample it is, and so on, that ideally would be recorded in a digital way and stay with the sample through its life cycle. Usually a sample goes from collection into storage in the lab, where it is processed in the lab in preparation of analytical work. The results of the analyses are then being published, and the sample in, unfortunately, just a small percentage goes into archiving for further dissemination. Many samples actually don't see that step into archiving but get lost. But those samples that are archived and further disseminated through online catalogs will eventually be resampled by people, and the cycle starts over again. As I already mentioned, the status of the digital side of samples as well as the physical side is actually not great. Many samples and collections do not have an online presence. Repositories really lack the resources to develop digital catalogs. The whole digitization of information that has been kept on index cards or in books is a very time-intense process and is therefore, not gone very far. And samples that are in possession of individual investigators often only get described in publications and not even very carefully there. And whatever online catalogs exist, they are not connected or integrated in any way, so it's really hard to search for particular samples for reuse in new projects. And another aspect clearly is that there is a lack of resources for archiving samples, policies also at institutions, and guidance on how to archive and curate samples, how to prioritize with the curation, because obviously there are space limitations. So there are many issues both in the digital and in the physical world of samples. These have clearly been expressed within the EarthCube community, within the series of EarthCube domain end user workshops. Samples have been mentioned many times. Here's the example of the end user workshop for petrology and geochemistry that was held at the Smithsonian Institution in March 2013. That clearly where participants clearly expressed their frustration about poor and uneven access and management of sample collection, incomplete sample tracking, and linking of samples to analyses in the literature, the difficulty of discovering existing samples for further research, but also actually the inadequate density of sampling through space and time that makes sort of a data science, data mining approach in using sample-based data very difficult. The needs have been expressed, and again here in the yellow box are two citations from executive summaries of EarthCube domain end user workshops, that the community needs online catalogs, either federated or in some way centralized, to be able to discover and access samples. There have to be there has to be a clear definition of how samples should be identified, documented, and cited in a consistent way. The community needs software tools that help both in the lab and in the field to capture sample metadata and manage them and curate them. And clearly, facilities are needed that actually preserve the samples and curate them in a way that they are accessible and can be disseminated. So the objective of this research coordination network, iSamples, is to make sure that the developments within EarthCube and within the broader cyber infrastructure also benefit the community that deals with physical samples and sample collections across the entire Earth sciences, so that discovery, access, sharing, analysis, and curation of physical samples and sample-based data is significantly improved. The goals of the iSamples RCN are have been basically designed to fit within the 2-year time frame that we have to conduct this project. It's to develop a shared vision for an Internet of Samples that actually has participation from all disciplines within the earth sciences and to come to a common understanding of what the requirements are. We want to enhance the awareness of all the issues that relate to samples and their digital management, but also generate awareness of existing resources that already have been developed to support digital sample management. And 2 examples provided here are the International Geosample number, which provides a way for uniquely identifying samples globally, and the Darwin Core, which provides a standard metadata profile, particularly for paleobiological and biological samples. Another goal is to converge on and eventually build consensus for best practices and standards, taking into account the existing resources that I already mentioned for identification, citation, documentation that can be adopted across the very broad and diverse stakeholder community. Our strategy is to enhance communication. We will engage a broad group of stakeholders in basically establishing a new community of practice, creating partnerships and collaborations, not only among similar efforts such as museums, collections, repositories, or departments, but particularly between these entities and software engineering, computer sciences, and so on. This community of practice is also intended to develop community-endorsed best practices and standards, and then define actually a plan how to move forward after the RCN will be over. We want to coordinate among all the various activities that are currently going on for digital sample management, which also includes beyond what I mentioned already with respect to unique identification or metadata standards, also involves the development of software tools for sample management, for collection management that can be both commercial software solutions or software solutions that are developed in other disciplines beyond the earth sciences. And we want to evaluate if and how all these different resources can be used and scaled up to serve the samples and collections across the entire earth sciences. So this diagram just shows or provides an overview of the stakeholders that we have engaged in the iSamples RCN. We have a list of over 80 participants that come from a wide range of the domain sciences, from computer sciences and cyber infrastructure, from software engineering, we have representatives of large-scale science programs such as the Ocean Drilling Program or the International Continental Drilling Program, and sampling campaigns in conjunction with observatory efforts such as the Critical Zone Observatory or the Ocean Observatories. We have many curators from museums, academic repositories in this effort. We have publishers and professional societies engaged, data facilities that handle sample-based data, various agencies, and last but not least, a range of EarthCube projects, which I will show another slide of, which are the ones that are relevant. And I mentioned most of these already as examples for relevant activities among which we want to coordinate. There is the IGSN. There is a planning effort ongoing for a shared digital environment for sample curation that would provide a shared solution for collection management of smaller repositories and other collections. The Darwin Core. Then we have the Open Geospatial Consortium Observation and Measurement Standard that defines actually a logic structure for describing sampling features such as specimens. There are other efforts going on for unique identifiers such as the Biocode Commons identifier and the Life Science identifier. So there is a lot to build on for our Research Coordination Network. The activities that we are planning to do can be grouped into three different components. We will focus on socialization as under the lead of Joel Kutscher-Gershenfeld, who has been engaged with EarthCube, leading the stakeholder alignment process. He will do a similar effort for the iSamples Research Coordination Network, conducting surveys and questionnaires and also providing facilitation of the workshops that we're planning to do. We want to create some resources that will last beyond the duration of the RCN. That is a catalog of earth science sample collections that will become part of the Synergy inventory, which is one of the building block efforts within EarthCube. And we will set up a semantic wiki under the lead of Yolanda Gill to create a resource that will have information on best practices, standards, on available resources, and so on. And last but not least, there is the effort of engaging early career scientists to change sample and data practices, and that is related to the AGU workshop that I'm going to briefly talk about. Just to elaborate a bit on these activities, I mentioned the stakeholder alignment will start at it will start with a survey that we're working on before the first workshop, and then at the first workshop, which will happen in January 2015, Joel will be there and help facilitate the workshop as well as the synthesis workshop a year later to really bring the communities together and form some initial consensus on the focus of the activities and the path forward. I mentioned the surveys want to collect data on the views and priorities of the various stakeholders, and then hopefully at the first workshop generate enough consensus to develop a charter that will guide the ongoing operations of the RCN. I've basically described these activities, so I'm not going to go there again. And for the last one, the early career scientist activities, we want to engage early career scientists, and particularly graduate students, in a dedicated effort to transform the handling of data and samples, and also the practices of sharing these samples and the culture of sharing the samples. We want to develop a vision for future sample-based research workflows, and all this, I should mention, will be conducted under the lead of Ben Hallett from the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh. He will also lead an effort that will go on beyond the forum happening at the AGU meeting to develop use case-based digital training modules that will be shared through EarthCube, through our iSamples wiki, but also through the Science Education Resource Center and the National Science Digital Library. Here is the overview of all the related activities in EarthCube, or funded projects in EarthCube that we are trying to interact with and integrate with. GeoLink is a recently funded building block for semantic web that is actually focusing on building up linked data capabilities for sample data. The Earth-centered Communication for Cyber Infrastructure Research Coordination Network focuses on cyber infrastructure for field work, and thus is clearly closely connected to samples. I mentioned Synergy already as a community inventory of resources for EarthCube that will include a registry of sample collections. Geosoft is another building block effort to preserve and share software, and with software developments related to sample management, that is an important connection for us. And the RCN C4P that's actually hosting this presentation clearly has a big focus on samples with paleobiological samples as their primary concern. So here is a list of the events, the large events that we're actually planning. So at the AGU meeting in December, we will have the Early Career Forum, which will happen over lunch on Thursday, December 18. But there's also going to be a town hall of the International Geosample number on Sunday afternoon. It's sort of an information meeting about what's going on with the IGSN, and trying to inform also about a variety of efforts going on that are currently focusing on bringing physical objects, physical samples into cyber infrastructure, including iSamples, but also new task groups and initiatives that are out there. The first workshop of the iSamples RCN will happen at the end of January at UT Austin. And a second workshop will happen a year later in North Carolina at the Renaissance Computing Institute. So with this, I'm moving to an overview of the Early Career Forum at AGU. It's trying to inform early career scientists about the RCN and about recent developments in digital sample management, stimulate discussion of sample issues among the participants, and sharing of what people do at the moment to solve their problems, and then identify engaged early career scientists who would like to participate in building the training material for graduate students. This is actually an effort that will provide a modest level of funding to the participant. We envision about 5 to 8 participants in this effort. So hopefully we will have some engaged students or postdocs present at the meeting, but it looks really great. We have currently already 35 registrations for our forum, and we had requested response to a series of questions as sort of an introductory survey to the forum, which, I would like to hand over for the presentation of those actually to Megan Carter, who is here with me and who is sort of running the entire research coordination network, helping getting all the logistics done and coordinating and communicating with everybody who is interested in participating in this. So Megan is a data manager here at the Lamont Geoinformatics Group and part of the Integrated Earth Data Applications Facility. And yeah, Megan, go for it.
So we just wanted to give you a brief overview of some of the information that we collected when applicants expressed their interest in attending the Early Career Forum in San Francisco. So we were able to draw a number of graduate students and early career people who collect a wide range of physical samples. And as you can see here, we have representatives who work with everything from rocks to modern-day weaves to experimental run products. And this really shows that questions about sample preservation and reuse and data management really spans a very broad range of earth sciences domains. Yes. We also asked participants why they were interested in taking part in the Early Career Forum, and there were a whole bunch of different motivations that were noted. But in general, people, early career scientists and graduate students, they really wanted to develop good practices that would help them enhance their research and pass on good practices to their future students. A lot of people talked about working with a wide range of samples and the difficulty working with both rocks and individual grains and photographs and trying to deal with a lot of different types of samples across a lot of different scales. And some people were just interested in, what is the state of the art for sample collection and preservation currently? We also asked where samples were stored. And as you can see here, most people indicated that their samples are not stored in one location, but in multiple places, in multiple rooms, sometimes at multiple institutions, and sometimes even in multiple countries. And a common theme that we saw, especially amongst the graduate students, was that their samples are essentially stored wherever there's space. So under tables, in cupboards, in unused corners of different rooms. And some people said that when their graduate work was completed, their samples were moved either to their new institution or they were moved to their houses, or in some cases, which is very sad, their samples had to be discarded because their institution no longer had space for them. So this is something that we see not just with younger students, people just starting out in earth sciences, but we also see this with people who are just finishing their careers as well. When we asked who knew where to find a particular sample in someone's collection, pretty much everyone said only me. Some students or applicants said that their advisor might have an idea of where their samples could be found, but that they couldn't guarantee this. A few people also mentioned that their group mates might know where to look, but in general, everyone said that they were the only person who could for sure locate items in their collection. And then this was kind of an interesting and controversial topic. I would say it would be very interesting to discuss. When asked how applicants felt about sharing information about their own samples and or their advisors or institution samples, some people were very willing to do so. They would like to share everything. In general, most people said that they would not like to share information until publications have been released or dissertations have been finished. Some people would like to defer to their advisor or collaborators about what they should do with the information about their samples. Someone even said, I am not fully aware of all the pros and cons of sharing information about what samples we have, which I think might be something that several people feel and will be interesting to discuss. And then others indicated that they work with samples collected in collaboration with industry and they were not sure about the logistics or how, whether or not it would be allowed to release information about their samples.
Okay, thanks, Megan. Great. So basically, I've already mentioned this, the development of digital training modules, what is going to happen there. As I said, it will provide modest stipends to members of this working group for the time they invest into helping this effort. We plan to make anything any of these modules available at multiple online resources. And we will clearly reach out to faculty members in the first place, to faculty members within the steering committee of the RCN, but anybody who we can reach to see how these type of modules or the education about sample and data management can be incorporated into earth science curricula. So that was it. I hope that we will achieve our goal with this RCN to improve discovery access and sharing of physical samples, and we clearly will try to address as much as we can some of the grand challenges that are out there beyond all the best practices and that we've already mentioned in software tools and so on, and that is to find resources for actually bringing all the sample collections into the digital world and making them accessible online, to build the tools that will help really implement the new practices into the workflow of researchers, and then, solving the problem of sample preservation and curation with all the resources needed to support the dissemination and preservation of samples. So thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks a lot, Kerstin and Megan. So if you have any questions, just type them into the chat box and I can read those out loud. We have a question which is, what's the best way to learn and keep up to date with iSamples activities? Is there a mailing list or another way to keep informed?
There is actually, Leslie might be the better person to answer that, but there's clearly the EarthCube website on which we will post any events and developments, workshop reports, and so on. And as far as I know, there is a mailing list. Is that correct, Leslie? Or is that you?
I'm not sure if there's an iSamples mailing list, but I think definitely the EarthCube workspace is a good place to look, and one can sign up to have notifications from that workspace.
Okay, so we will set up an iSamples mailing list. I think that's really important. I guess we didn't manage to get to that yet.
Okay, great. The next question is, are the workshops open to anyone who's interested?
Yes, they are.
Okay, and another question we have is, how is the IGSN Town Hall at AGU different from the Early Career Forum?
The IGSN Town Hall will very much focus on unique identifiers for samples and particularly on the activities of the IGSN. And as I mentioned during the presentation, the IGSN is one solution for a globally unique identifier, and we are conducting this town hall in conjunction with the annual General Assembly of the members of the IGSN organization. So the IGSN is actually governed by an international organization of institutions that allocate IGSNs, and that town hall will be an event to inform people of what's going on with the IGSN. It will clearly point to related activities of digital sample management, but it will be a different forum inviting anybody, not only the early career scientists.
Okay, thanks. I don't see any other questions at this time. So I want to thank again the presenters today, Kerstin and Megan. Thanks very much. And remind you that this webinar will be available later, both at the EarthCube website and the C4P YouTube channel. And for future webinars, you can check the C4P webinar schedule at the earthcube.org site. So thank you very much for attending, and we hope to see you at a future webinar.
Thanks. Bye.